I'm going to go ahead and start recording, everybody, just so you know what's happening. Good morning. Welcome. We still have people joining in. Good morning, all. Hello, hello. Okay. Well, welcome. Thank you all for joining us today. My name is Donna Coyne. I'm the Associate Director of Admissions here at UC Santa Barbara. This is our first time doing this particular event, talking about homeschooled applicants. And when I say homeschool, I really mean non-traditional paths. We sort of lump everybody in and call them all homeschooled. But specifically for those students who are more likely to not be attending a traditional 9 through 12 high school and are looking to be competitive for admission for the University of California. So we're going to give you an idea of what we look for when we are reviewing these applications. Probably a lot of you are independent counselors who are working one-on-one with these students, but there might be high school counselors here too who are working with students who were homeschooled and are now at their public or private 9 through 12 schools. So some of these things are going to be review for a lot of you that I'm going to go quickly through, and then hopefully we'll leave leave time for questions here at the end. You have both the Q&A, you can ask a question as we go. I have multiple colleagues here with me today that can either hold your question till the end and they'll let me know what the question is to be answered online. Otherwise, if it's something that they can tackle, it's more of a technical question, then we will go ahead and tackle that as we go. So thank you again for coming. We really appreciate your time, and we will provide these slides to everyone who registered, so you don't have to worry too much about taking notes and such. Okay. All right. Let's see if I can get us going. And sharing. All right. So you should be seeing our screen now, our Stork Tower.
I think we still see you.
You still see me? All right. There's that. Let's try it again. All right. Better?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. So again, welcome. We are talking about homeschooled or non-traditional applicants to the University of California. We're going to go quickly through our, oh, it's not moving. I'm sorry. Here we go. Homeschooled applicants. We're going to go quickly through a quick first year admission requirements. We're going to talk about how we review students within the context of what they're doing. We'll talk about some alternative paths such as transfer, and then I'll open it up for Q&A. I am going to go pretty quickly through a lot of the academic stuff because you will have these slides later, so I'm not going to go too in depth because I do want to make sure that we are able to address any particular issues that you came to talk about today. So the University of California, we are really trying to embrace a really rich population of students, and to do that, we need to honor and recognize that everyone has a different path in life, and that we are encouraging students of all walks of life to apply to the university and to make up a student body that is rich and interesting and gives everyone perspective in a classroom, for example. And students who do have a different path do add to that diversity. So that is something that we are looking for in the application process. Comprehensive review is the policy of the University of California. There are 13 factors that we're able to honor and review students with during our internal process, and they're here. As you can see, a lot of them are kind of structured, like a GPA and number of A through G courses and that type of academic information. For a lot of these students, they may not have that. They may have done something truly different. They may have mom or dad as their primary instructor, and those grades are not going to really go into a GPA for the University of California, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in just a second. But several of these things, like ELC is eligible in the local context. It's a California construct. So for California students in public or private high schools that do participate, students can get an ELC ranking, and then we receive that. So that's essentially identifying the strongest students in that particular school. And it's a way of us recognizing that the students have excelled within the context of their education. So that is not, again, not something that most of the students that we're talking about today are going to have, but the sentiment is the same. We're looking for students who have excelled within the context of their environment. And so how we get to what is that context is the part that's hard, and the part that I think a lot of students have questions about, and they're likely going to you to try to answer them. So I'm hoping to give you some things to think about today. I will say that I am not an expert in homeschooling itself, but I do and have for years reviewed a lot of these students. So I hopefully can give you some good advice as to things that are more successful approaches to the application for students who have a non-traditional path. So comprehensive review is essentially meaning we do not admit students with one characteristic. We are looking at multiple characteristics and multiple measures of achievement in all of the students' life. And so we do want them to present themselves and help us understand their experience. Academically, the courses that we recognize that students are taking do still need a regional accreditation. So these are the University of California recognized accreditation bodies. If a student attends something outside of this, that is not going to go into any sort of GPA. So most traditional homeschool students do not have a regional accreditation, do not have coursework. I would say more of the students these days are attending multiple institutions. They're doing online courses, they're doing community college courses, they maybe have one or two subjects at home if they really are a homeschool. Some people are purchasing a whole curriculum from an accredited district. And ultimately, many of those will help us create a GPA for that student and help give context to the student's level of achievement, the things that they've accomplished, the courses that they've taken. We are at a minimum looking for a student that we believe can do the level of work at the University of California. And so having accredited coursework is important in that way, to essentially convince an admissions reader that the student is capable of doing the work at the same level as the rest of the incoming class. So minimum admission requirements, traditionally, and this is the standard, we need a certain number and pattern of courses, which we call A through G. There's a scholarship requirement, a minimum GPA of a 3.0 for California residents and a 3.4 for non-residents. And this is actually not a minimum requirement, but most campuses require high school graduation as a part of their condition of admission. So it essentially is a minimum requirement, but it's not listed as a requirement for every campus. The campus can determine whether they want to require students to have that. It is in the UC Santa Barbara conditions of admission. So and I will talk a little bit about how students can accomplish that if they are doing a non-traditional path. So A through G, pretty straightforward: history, English, math, science, language other than English, VPA, and college electives. Students, again, on this path are not necessarily going to have exactly this many years required, this many years of coursework in those areas. So I'm going to go quickly through alternative ways to meet the subject areas. So again, with the goal of demonstrating that they have the breadth of content that our other applicants have, and that they are accomplished or capable of success in those courses, which could translate to success on our campus. So the three basic ways that people are going to satisfy these requirements are high school courses taken through an accredited high school or an accredited online program with a UC course list. And there's a lot of distance programs with that the University of California recognizes and has course lists for. So if your student is looking for to take a particular course that they're interested in, there's a variety of programs out there, really many programs out there that offer coursework online or through the mail or other mediums that are available. Transferable college level courses. So this would be at for California students, typically at a local community college. Online is also an option for these students. If the course is transferable in the subject matter of A through G, that would be an acceptable way to meet that particular subject. And I'm going to quickly go through all of those as well. Plus AP and IB exams. A lot of students are doing sort of self-study or doing sort of a culmination program where they study a particular topic for a certain amount of time, and then they culminate that experience by taking the AP exam and saying that they, showing that they can be successful in that particular topic. So accredited high schools with A through G course list. I wanted to show you when you go to this site, and here's the course list website. It's very easy to Google UC A through G course lists, and it'll come right up. But a lot of people don't see the filters, and I wanted to be sure to show you there's filters. Go to school type, and you can sort the applicable schools by online, independent study, or classroom based. UC Scout or Scout from the University of California is a good example of a way a student can take courses that will be recognized, that there is a transcript for, and that could satisfy a particular requirement. But as I said, there are many, many, many different institutions that offer this type of coursework. Okay, so I'm going to quickly just show you each of the subject areas, A through G. I'm not going to go through them because, again, you'll have these slides, but this is each one of these has specific coursework or scores, exams that are going to satisfy those areas. Okay, so area A, a year of world history and a year of US history in some fashion. Area B, 4 years of English. This is unlike the other subject areas in that ACT and SAT with particular scores can satisfy the particular subject area. Just a reminder that the University of California does not use ACT or SAT in our selection processes, and it is not required of students to take the exams. This would be a recommendation if the student thinks that they're particularly strong. An ACT, for example, with a score of 30 will meet the entire 4-year English requirement. So if a student thinks that their strength is that, they could take the ACT and what we call validate the subject area. Area C, math. Again, exam scores. And math is a particular, as most of you know, a particularly different subject area in that geometry cannot be validated by exams. And so the student does need to pick up an actual geometry course somewhere along the lines if they want to meet that full subject area. There are some community colleges that still offer geometry. I would say it's a lot fewer these days as the community colleges have changed their policy on math placement, but it still can be found, and certainly a high school level course can be found online as well. Area D, science, so a year of physical science, at least 1 year of physical science, but the student needs 2 different disciplines within the 2-year requirement. College courses also are fine. We recommend that they have a laboratory with that. And alternative ways for area E, language other than English, which we call LOTE, language other than English. And so there are a variety of language exams if a student is fluent in a different language. Again, they can take transferable courses or find courses online. And visual and performing arts. We do get a lot of questions around VPA because they are more of an in-person medium typically. So a student trying to take an online course in visual and performing arts sometimes feels like there's a disconnect. But truly, there are a lot of college courses online that will meet the requirement. So if a student is trying to do a community college course or a VPA at an online high school, for example, there really are a pretty good breadth of availability. I would say the only thing in this area to be very careful of is the course needs to be 3 semester units or 4-quarter units or more. They cannot take 3 1-unit courses. Like, they might take ballet, and at a community college, a ballet course might be a 1-unit course. They can't take 3 of those to add up to 3 semesters. The course that they choose has to be at least 3 semesters all by itself, okay? And area G. Area G is almost always met by exceeding the minimum in other areas. So a student might be super interested in science and they might take 3 or 4 years of science and have plenty of sort of extra courses, and those can be used to meet area G. And there's a little bit of advice here along those lines. They could take something totally different as well. It doesn't have to be exceeding the minimum in another area, they can take things that really do fit within the electives area alone. So like cultural anthropology would be a good example of that. Okay, so here's where we get to sort of the meat of it. When a student is doing their PIQs, we're looking for them to put their best foot forward. They want to be convincing the reader that they're capable, that they are academically strong, that they have an interesting background or purpose in doing their education in a different way. So I've given you a couple of things to help students think about their experience and hopefully so they're able to communicate that in a way that is compelling. So for example, why did they choose homeschool? You know, was it a family belief that the public school didn't offer what that student needed? Or, you know, there's people with religious convictions, there's people with health issues, serious health issues, where they physically could not go to a traditional high school. So I think the readers are really interested in knowing, okay, well, why did you do things differently? Very basic, but sometimes students kind of skip over it. And the PIQs are broad enough so that the student can really talk about anything, but in this circumstance, they're not specific enough to say, no, why you're different and why did you do this? Important factors like why. So why did they pick this path? And what about that path is helping them to be ready for a university environment? I'll tell you, I have had families or, you know, through their family, but I've had families tell me and students write in their applications things like, you know, a much smaller environment is better for my learning style. You know, one-on-one attention really helped me understand the material better. And those are important factors and compelling, but that's not the environment at a university, right? Or certainly at a University of California campus. You know, that student is going to be in a lecture hall with a whole lot of other students. So how did their experience help them prepare for what their experience here is going to be and what the expectation is going to be? It's also important to know, how did they spend their time? A lot of non-traditional students have different extracurricular things happening in their world. I've seen, you know, professional athletes or professional performers, singers, dancers, actors, that kind of thing, that will have a very different experience in their education and can talk about, you know, this is how I make school work with my profession. Yeah, and so this is sort of general information, but we're really trying to get at what is special about this student and how did their educational path lead them here and where are they going? We're really just trying to get to know the student and understand their experience. Okay, this is some advice, and it is California centric. So if there are folks from outside of California, there are equivalents in your state and probably in your country if you're not from the United States. This is California centric because most of our applicants are from California. So there are two different ways for students to earn a state sanctioned diploma. The what we used to call the CHESP, the California High School Proficiency Exam, has been phased out and has been replaced by the proficiency program, the California proficiency program, and the high set proficiency requirements. There are very specific requirements to qualify for these things. But this is how a student can accomplish that high school diploma requirement. So if the campus that the student is planning to attend requires it, by taking one of these exams and passing it, that is their high school diploma. Okay, so the graduation date for the high school, for a student who is taking a GED or a high set exam, the graduation date is the date that they took the exam. So even though there's probably a month or 2 months until they get results, the actual graduation date on the certificate will be that date of the exam. This is important because a student who takes college level work, who enrolls in a college or university after the graduation date, technically becomes a transfer student at UC. That student can no longer apply as a first year applicant or a freshman. So the date when they take their test is important. And what they do immediately following that, if it's in a regular fall, winter, or spring term, can determine what type of applicant they are, a freshman or a transfer. So that's something to just be aware of. Okay, most students that we're talking about and that you're working with will likely not meet the A through G pattern. It is pretty common that this type of student, this non-traditional type of student, will have taken a lot of courses, will have had a lot of experiences, but they won't necessarily hit each and every category. And when that's true, or if they don't, in our case, if they don't have a high school diploma, if they don't take one of those exams, they would be considered for admission by exception. Admission by exception means we have confidence. It's essentially the admissions office saying, I have confidence that this student can be successful at this university, and we would love to have them as a part of our first year class, for example. It means that there's some technicality that they haven't exactly met, and so we would admit them by exception. Each campus, each University of California campus does have a small number of admission by exception students. Every single campus does. And it's for these reasons, right? There are just some things that aren't possible. And whatever that student's circumstance is, if they still have great potential, we encourage them to apply, and we review them for admission by exception. The students don't actually have to ask, by the way, to be reviewed for admission by exception. We automatically do that if a student is not meeting those A through G categories. Okay, and now students who don't attend high school at all, and are not earning a high school diploma, could also qualify via the transfer path. Transfer applicants are actually not required to have a high school diploma. So our regular transfer criteria would apply to them. So they need 60 semester or 90 quarter units. They need a particular pattern of courses, including 2 English composition courses, a transferable math course, and at least 4 courses in 2 different disciplines. And they have to have major preparation for the specific major that they hope to pursue at UCSB. One of the things about the transfer path that I would encourage you to help your students think about, the transfer student comes in and they could be admitted regular junior level transfer student at UCSB. We only admit junior level. Other campuses can admit lower division transfers, but I would say very few do. Especially in this kind of circumstance, I would say very few are admitting lower division transfers, but something to think about. A lot of students who go this path do start college work early. And are they socially, emotionally, and ready to be at the university? And what experience do they hope to get once they're here? A transfer student, we're expecting to graduate in 2 years. So once they are here, they're pursuing their particular major. They're perhaps engaged in research activities, and they would be surrounded by upper division students. So students who are 21, 22. If you have a 13-year-old, although we would not deny them because of that, but are they ready? There are some other considerations to think about for students who are very young. Where would they live? There are particular policies with housing that a student would have to look into to see, if they are hoping to live on campus. There are some requirements in terms of parental involvement, let's say. And those would be different at every campus as well. But the transfer path is a viable option for a student who you think is ready and both socially, emotionally, and academically prepared. Okay, transcripts are required from all institutions. So if a student took a course like a massive online community course or Coursera, there are some cultural organizations, for example, that might offer language courses, but they're not an academic organization, so they don't transcript those courses. If it's not an academic course, it would not go in the A through G coursework. It would have to be put in the non-A through G coursework and would not be contributing to the student's GPA. Okay, so if the student is taking those courses, they can certainly tell us about that and what they gained from that experience, but it would not go into their A through G the satisfaction of the A through G. Pass, not pass grades at the high school level are not used in A through G. And we ask that students do not send transcripts prior to being admitted and deciding on which campus they're going to enroll in. This becomes a real factor, actually, because many students do take a course here, a course there, a course there, and they do have to spend some time gathering up those transcripts and sending each one to the university that they are planning to attend. Okay, the conditions of admission are different at each of the UCs. I would say they have a lot of similarity. The courses that are listed as in progress in their application become required. They can't, a student can't decide just not to attend anymore if they've projected, let's say they projected 4 classes in the spring. They can't just not do them. That would be not meeting their conditions of admission. And all admissions offers are provisional until official documents are received. And we talked about that. And they do vary. Okay, we've given you just some links here so that if you are, when we send out the slides, you'll have these resources at your disposal. And we're ready for questions. Let's see. Stop sharing. And I'm back. Hi there. So, do we have any burning questions? Let me look in the Q&A.
There's a few, Donna,
Okay. Yeah,
First, then would you elaborate on the 6% cap on admission by exception?
right. So that is policy. The maximum is 6% of the incoming class. So a campus can admit, they would have to model, right, how many would actually yield that 6%. But they can admit up to the 6%. And that's, each campus identifies admission by exception students differently and has a different priorities for those admission by exception spaces, so to speak. I don't believe there's any UC campus that comes anywhere near 6% of their incoming class. It's very small. I would say at UCSB, it's I want to say it's less than 100 students are admitted admission by exception. So maybe half of those might enroll. So it's a very small number. And that goes to why it's important for students to try to meet eligibility. As I mentioned, they're not all going to, and that's okay. We will consider them for admission by exception. And if they are strong, if their story is compelling, their application is thorough, and we think that they fit nicely into the class, we will use an admission by exception space without a problem. That we have, as I said, we don't utilize anywhere near 6%.
Can you go back to the slide on accreditation?
I can, I hope. Hold on. Just a second. It was up at the beginning, yeah?
I think it was toward the beginning.
I'm getting there, folks. Bear with me. Here we go. And hold on, I'm not sharing. Sorry. Okay, back to here. Okay, I know you're seeing more than you hoped, but that's going to have to be good enough for now. So it is the 7 regional accreditation bodies, former accreditation bodies.
And these will be in the slides, right? That you sent out? Okay.
Correct.
There is a question about the equivalency test, I guess, for graduation. A PSA diploma is a valid diploma in California, even if it's unaccredited.
Okay. The ones that I know of that we would actually receive are the ones that I listed. That doesn't mean that there aren't other possibilities, I suppose. And if we received one, then I would research that. But this is my best advice and what I have seen from previous applicants. Okay. What if we have students who graduate very early? I've been told to work backwards, but they'll be different. Yeah. So your student, if you're working with a student right now who's filling out the application, you can work backwards. So what they're enrolled in this academic year is 12th grade. Then last academic year would be 11th, 10th, and so on. It gets pretty murky when you go back to, sixth grade. We're just not going to recognize that work as the same level and of accomplishment and material. But having said that, the students who are that brilliant at age 12 are probably doing other things like college level work or high school work while they're in middle school. And so it would really depend on how the high school is going to certify that work or post it on a transcript if it is a traditional high school. Otherwise, if it is a homeschool, a true homeschool program, then it's really incumbent upon the student to describe that experience and help us understand what was involved. I've seen very successful applications where it's very clear the level of work that they do just based on the description. Like, these are the kinds of projects that I did. You know, I built a computer from scratch with my dad, and I, you know, did chemistry experiments with this organization in my community. So, you know, there's a way for a student to convey their educational experiences that isn't necessarily going to show up on a transcript. And that is probably a good thing if in fact they don't have that kind of structure or validation that is an external validation of their experience. Someone who is somewhat neutral in grading and showing what the student has done. Okay, repeat what about high set dates. Okay, so yes, if a student takes a GED or high set exam, the exam date is their graduation date. Ultimately, it may be delayed. The student might not get results for a while, but when we receive it, that is the date that they graduated. So everything that happened after that point in time is considered post-graduation. Everything that happened before that point in time is considered part of their, quote, high school education. So if they took community college work, if they took external courses of any kind before the date, that would make that student, all of that material is their high school applicant material. If they enroll in college after that graduation, they become a transfer applicant and would have to meet the same requirements or be considered for admission by exception as a student who is a traditional transfer. So major prep requirements, if they're applying for engineering, for example, there's a long list of major prep courses that they would need if they were considered a transfer applicant. And if we're admitting a student as a transfer, that is an expectation that they do have the preparation for the particular major that they're hoping to enroll in. I did not provide admission statistics or admit rates for homeschooled students. I don't actually know them. It is a very small population. So UC Santa Barbara, for us, it's a very small population. UC Santa Barbara has about 110,000 applicants for first year admission annually. I would say roughly, but this number is going up, and that's one of the reasons we're trying to provide more advice for these students. You know, 5 years ago, or let's say pre-pandemic, there were maybe 50 applicants that had more of a non-traditional path or a true homeschooled education. Now I think it's probably 250, and I expect it to continue to grow. definitely post-pandemic, those numbers sort of double every year. So it is a small number of students that are admitted on this path. And hopefully I've been able to convey a little bit of what would provide a compelling argument for a student who has a non-traditional path. A student taking it in December may still plan on graduating in June, and their spring dual enrollment courses should not make it. That's crazy. That was a good comment. I know it's crazy. And I will say, a traditional high school student, that also happens where they graduate after fall term and they enroll in a community college full time. Technically, they're a transfer. Logistically and how we kind of handle them, we pretty much treat them as freshmen and keep them a part of the freshman pool. But it
Sorry,
is
Donna.
a policy to identify them as a transfer. That's right. Yeah,
No, I'd put that in the comments as well. It's sort of a gray area. I mean, a student
it
could look
is.
at as a transfer if they applied as a transfer, although we can look at them as a freshman as well if they applied as a first-year freshman. But I agree with what you said. In that scenario, if the student applied as a freshman, we would look at them as such in that same academic year.
Right. If it's in the same academic year that they graduate or take the
Yeah.
exam. Yeah, we pretty much do. And I think about it when I'm thinking through selection issues, I'm thinking through what do I do with this person who's this applicant that's in front of me. I'm thinking about what experience is that student both expecting and need at the university. And I think more often than not, they're expecting and hoping for that freshman first year student experience. And they probably most of them probably plan to be at the university for more than 2 years. So we kind of think about them in that way. But that's not to say that a student couldn't graduate in 2 if they really did come with the 60 semester units. There's a question that says ideally students take 20 unit course loads. What if they take one course at a time and have many work or volunteer or other things happening? Would this demonstrate their capability? I look for a sustained level, and it's all contextual, right? If your student is a full-time athlete, if they're a professional tennis player, for example, their time and travel and other things are going to be involved in what they've accomplished, right? And what was logistically possible for them. So we're really looking at it through that lens, like what is the student doing? Why are they on this path? How accomplished are they? And what do they bring to the first year cohort? I would say 20 units is a lot of units for anyone, for a transfer student or a freshman. If you're talking about college level units, if you're talking about high school, that would be 4 courses. If they're 5-unit high school courses, that would be 4 courses. That would be pretty standard. I would say it depends on what the mix of the courses are and what level those courses are. If they're taking 4 college level courses, like a chemistry course and a English composition course and a this and a that, I'm going to think about that in this more or less in the same way that I think about a transfer applicant. They're taking a full-time course load of transferable courses. If they're high school courses, that looks more, I would say, average to me. A 4-course pattern for a high school student is very standard, right? Even a little light, but That's just the level of selection for our particular campus. But you know, again, that depends on what the courses are and what the student is trying to accomplish. So everything is really, you know, again, seen through that lens. No, so the question is, when a student satisfies the diploma requirement through GED or HiSET, are the scores considered as a part of the review? No, we get essentially they passed or well, we don't even get it if they didn't pass. So we just get they passed. Okay. Can you clarify? No UCs require these equivalency tests at this point. Are you implying that this is preferred? If you're saying the equivalency is for the high school diploma requirement, then yes, it is preferred because it's a part of the conditions of admission. If a student doesn't meet that, we would still admit that student. We would just have to make them admission by exception rather than having them as a fully eligible applicant. So doing the A through G and the different ways to satisfy the A through G plus the high school diploma is a roundabout way of making a student technically eligible, right? Because they have a high school diploma and they have A through G. They would, if they have A through G, they have a GPA, and if that GPA is high enough, then the student has met the minimum requirements. The diploma requirement is a condition of admission, and so that student could be regularly admitted if they had all of those. If they didn't, we would have to put them in admission by exception. And there are very few of those. So I would say most campuses would be more likely to admit a student that has everything because it's demonstrated success. Okay. There is one more. If students take community colleges courses early and receive low grades just to get the advanced level courses and have a lot of research experience, will the low GPA and lack of test taking skills hinder their chances? Yes. It's not a satisfying answer, but yes, if they have lower grades, their overall GPA is not going to be competitive for our campus and probably for most University of California campuses. It doesn't mean they would still get, if they were admitted, they would get the units for those courses, great, you know, and they would progress towards graduation quicker, but it would be a pretty extraordinary student that would have C grades in all of their introductory courses and taking those higher level courses now, and we would not admit that student likely, if that makes sense. Okay, friends. I am going to go ahead and call it a day. My name is Donna Coyne, and you can always reach me at UCSB if you have specific questions. My email is Donna_Coyne, COYNE @ucsb.edu. We will make these slides available to you and be available for any specific questions that you might have about your students. So thank you all for attending today. We appreciate your time and have a great day.